Welcome to the Supporting Young Hearts, the Heart to Heart series, a podcast to help support the emotional health and well-being of younger adults living with a heart condition, have had a heart event or heart-related surgery. The Heart Foundation acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respect to them and their cultures and elders past, present and future. I'm your host, Carly Weiner, a clinical psychologist working alongside the Heart Foundation with a special interest in young people and chronic health conditions. Throughout this series, we want to support, connect and inform you to help you best manage your heart health and emotional well-being related to the unique stage of life that you're in. For more information about what we discussed today, or if you need further support, please see links in the show notes or visit heartfoundation.org.au. Welcome to episode 4 on sex, intimacy and relationships. Sexual health concerns are common in patients with all types of cardiac conditions. From everything from bruised groins, a scarred chest, breathlessness, to navigating partners' responses, today we try and tackle the tough topic nobody talks about. More than 8 in 10 Australian health professionals believe it's important to talk to heart attack survivors about sexual activity and intimacy, yet less than a quarter actually do. Today, we're joined by 2 fabulous women who share their stories and experience in this domain. During our conversations today, we ask the questions you've asked us anonymously via our Facebook page. Check out the show notes after you've listened to the episode for more information and resources. First, we speak to Alicia Philippatos, who was 3 days old when her heart condition was diagnosed. At age 29, she had open heart surgery for a valve replacement. Alicia has been publicly open about dating and intimacy whilst living with a heart condition and has agreed to share her story of how her relationship wasn't able to move past the issue of intimacy and what lessons she learned. She'll also be giving advice on how she navigates the dating world as a single young woman with a heart condition.
I have had partners who, as we start dating, they will ask about my physical capability. I'm very, very open with them on it. You just communicate your way through it. I'm fine, or perhaps not like that. I like this. I think it's the same with any kind of sexual preference. It's about openly saying what you do like and what you don't like without criticising.
Then we meet with renowned psychosexologist, scientist and sex and relationship expert, also with lived experience of a heart condition, Chantelle Otten. Chantelle will provide her expertise on intimacy as well as answer some common questions surrounding intimacy with a heart condition.
Any time that you're thinking about your sex life, when it's not fun, when it's not easy, when it's not pain-free, that is when you have to think, maybe there's something going on here.
We hope that by answering your questions and discussing this today, you feel empowered to have these conversations with your loved ones and health professionals. Alicia, tell us a little bit about your heart condition and when it started to have an impact on your love life.
So I was born with tetralogy of Fallot, and I had my first open heart surgery at the age of 4.5. The second surgery was at the age of 29 for a valve replacement. An impact on my love life? I'd probably say leading up to my second surgery. The emotional impact of kind of being in a waiting room affected my relationship, and then post-surgery it affected our intimacy quite significantly.
And tell me what happened in your relationship leading up to it. What was going on with you two?
We had bought a house, made that commitment, moved in together. We were very much in love. And then I started going through all of the testing for surgery, including a full heart study. I don't know if you know about a full heart study, but it's like an angiogram, but with 2 probes instead of 1.
Fun times.
Lovely. But the result of that is this huge bruise kind of just below your groin. It was the biggest bruise I've ever seen, and it was, my partner couldn't get past it. So then once the bruise kind of subsided, I was heading into surgery, and then it kind of made things a little bit difficult post-surgery because he just didn't want to hurt me. And as a result, we didn't really go near each other for a while, but all other types of intimacy kind of were off the table as well.
So you had a really obvious sign that you'd just had this medical intervention and maybe surgery impending.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about his reaction when he saw the bruise. Was he extra cautious? Was he anxious? Did you talk about it?
Look, we probably didn't talk about it as much as we should have. Initially the bruise was on my right-hand side and I used to sleep on the left-hand side of the bed. So then he didn't want to accidentally knock me on that side. So I changed sides of the bed so that he couldn't accidentally knock me. So he just wouldn't go anywhere near me. And then I didn't know how to communicate my way out of it because I was scared of getting hurt as well, physically, really. But as a result, you get hurt emotionally.
You speak a little bit about your difference in communication styles, and I think you're touching on perhaps you didn't communicate enough, or each of you didn't know what to communicate.
Yeah.
What lessons do you think you've learnt about that?
I think I've learnt that communication, even through the really, really basic stuff, is another level of intimacy that I probably didn't explore, that I was too scared to explore. I felt like approaching that would just, I don't know, entertain the elephant in the room, and I just wasn't sure. It just becomes such a big thing that you avoid it completely because you just don't know how to start. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger the longer you wait. I mean, now I've been single ever since that relationship ended, and I communicate my needs and my wants very, very early in the game now.
So how early do you tell someone that you have a heart condition?
There's a lot of online dating lately, so generally before I meet them, if not when I meet them. I mean, I don't cover myself up, so I have it on show usually on a first date if they don't know, because I'm prompting them to ask the question. And if they don't, I mention it anyway.
Okay. So you actually bear it. You want to tell them early. You want to have that conversation.
Yeah.
What's the advantage of doing that?
I think they know where they stand. I don't want to promote myself, or I don't want to be seen as super vulnerable. I'm just not that type of person. So I'd rather show that straight away. And I mean, I'm pretty active and pretty fit. So once they get to know me a little bit better, they understand how active I am, and it becomes less of an issue. But there are always questions at the start.
What do you think changed for you in terms of feeling too scared to share things in that earlier relationship, and now you bear it all? It seems like a really big turnaround.
Oh God. I was really hurt after that relationship. I was really hurt. And it wasn't all of his fault. You know, I just shoulder a lot of that responsibility. And I just didn't want to waste my time, anyone else's time. And I don't know, I think I was really, really proud of my recovery, and I wanted to share that, make sure everyone knew that.
So you have a lot of lessons learned from that, and you have a newfound confidence in terms of maybe not repeating old mistakes or not wanting to do that same again.
Yeah. I don't want to walk away thinking, oh, I haven't communicated my needs and my wants and the little parts of me. Yeah, I don't want to leave any of that out and have any kind of regret.
Have you ever had the experience of feeling shy about your body, whether it's scars or body image that a lot of our listeners might have?
I think a lot of men and women have body insecurities in general. For me, not so much about the scar. I think initially after my surgery, my scar was longer than the existing, so an extra 3 centimetres. That I was not happy with. But then there were these 2 marks down the bottom for where they had the drainage tubes and the pacing wires and stuff. And those were huge crosses, and I was not happy with those. I was so upset, and I was telling my mum in hospital, I don't like them. I don't care about the scar. The scar's fine, but those crosses, they're hideous. And her response was, it's okay, we'll let it heal, we'll speak to a plastic surgeon if you're still worried about it. And so yeah, you do. That was probably my biggest concern, but in general, overall, I'm better, much better.
What advice do you think you'd give to people who might be struggling with scars, body image, signs of surgery, and how do you improve your relationship with your scars and your body?
Look, for me, it was about getting strong and feeling physically and emotionally well. So diet, exercise. I did lose weight after my surgery. You know, now I'm pretty much back up to my existing weight, but I weight lift on the regular. I run, I do yoga, and that mind-body connection is everything, especially with exercise, and that confidence that you get and that strength that you get, that moves into other aspects of your life that you wouldn't even think of when you're doing it. You just think, oh, I'll feel better about my body, or I'll be skinnier, so I'll be happy. But it's more than that. It's much more than that. So I would recommend for our listeners to do what makes them feel strong, and what makes them feel confident, and, you know, kind of beast mode is what I call it generally.
Beast mode.
Beast mode.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're saying there that rather than focusing on how you physically look, focus on how you physically feel and what your body can do, as opposed to focusing on reminders or pain or
everything else comes with that. You know, the minute you feel strong, the minute you feel fit, the minute you can lift more and have that physical confidence, the body acceptance, the body shape that you want, that all comes, you know, in time if you're patient and you're consistent.
So you're very open about sexuality and intimacy.
Yeah.
Have you had this discussion with your health professionals?
I mean, everything. I probably didn't ask the questions around sex after surgery. I used a lot of online resources for that and asked people with conditions. The conversations I have with health professionals now are more around I've just frozen my eggs, for example, and whether I'm planning on having children and the impact it will have on my heart when I do decide to have children, and you know they would have liked me to have them a little while ago and I haven't yet. So those types of conversations, as opposed to the whole, you know, how's it going with your partner, because I haven't really had a partner with me since for the last 5 years.
So you've had those family planning discussions. Do you think it would be important to talk to your doctors or health professionals about sex?
Yeah, get as much information as you can.
How could you possibly raise that conversation?
I mean, they give you a handbook and it says as soon as you climb 2 flights of stairs, then you can have sex. But a lot of people don't know how to ask that question. So then maybe it's the clinician that needs to say, so have you thought about sex and have you thought about other types of intimacy? Because that will get the initial fear out of the patient and their partner. And I know that puts a lot of responsibility on the clinician, but that will open up the conversation for sure. And then you can explore with your clinician there other types of intimacy and what positions are on the table and what are off the table. So everyone's very, very clear on what you can and can't do.
So I wanted to touch on something that's really common that we get asked, and that's around partners and managing maybe their anxiety or their uncertainty around how to navigate your body or scars, visible signs. What would you say to any partners that might feel anxious or ask, are you okay, or be very on edge about intimacy?
I have had partners who, you know, as we start dating, they will ask about my physical capability, and I'm very, very open with them on it. And I, unlike some, have very little limitations, if not any, when it comes to sex. And because I am so fit, I think they completely lose sight of it because I'm fine and they just forget. I have had the occasional who are, you know, overly attentive, and that's fine. You just communicate your way through it. I'm fine. Or perhaps not like that. Or, you know, I like this. I think it's the same with any kind of sexual preference. It's about openly saying what you do like and what you don't like without criticising. As the person with the condition, you need to communicate more than the person without, because they might be too scared to ask, and they might be too scared to ask, or they might not know what they should ask. So then if there's a limitation that you have, then you communicate that and then you offer an alternative.
Well, it sounds like you've been able to manage all of the nuances and complexities of intimacy and dating. Do you have anything else you'd like to tell our listeners about intimacy and dating with a heart condition?
I would say that when people think about intimacy, they think about sex and sex only, but it's more than that. So if sex is off the table after a procedure, any procedure, it could be you've just had a child, I encourage you to explore other forms of intimacy. Whether that's conversation, whether that's just being in each other's space more, holding hands, just taking little moments, because those small things will lead into bigger things. That's my best advice.
Because ultimately intimacy is about connection, right? So whatever you can do to connect with your partner, even if it's not in physical ways, it'll build that emotional intimacy, which ultimately will lead to physical intimacy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant. Good advice. Well, thank you so much for joining. It's been amazing to hear your story and your lessons learned. And I wish you well in your dating life.
Thank you.
Thanks. Today we are joined by the fabulous Chantelle Otten, a renowned psychosexologist who is passionate about empowering people to feel great about their sexual health. Chantelle is open, inclusive, and offers a judgment-free space for all genders, orientations, and identities. Working with both couples and singles, she educates, empowers, and counsels on a vast range of sexual wellbeing topics. Welcome, Chantelle. Let's talk about sex.
Thank you for having me.
So you're a psychosexologist. What exactly is that, and how do you help people with sex and intimacy?
So a sexologist is someone who helps anyone, an individual or couples, on any kind of sexual question, concern, or I guess problem that they might have. That can lead into how we work with different health conditions. That can just be, you know what, I need to have a little bit more fun, or I don't know how to be present in the bedroom. There are so many things that this incorporates, and I am a specialist in the biggest sexual organ, which is the brain, and how to connect the brain, the body, and that into your sex life.
Great. And what does a typical day look like for you?
Oh my goodness, that's a really good question. I don't really have typical days. So I am a sexologist, but I also have a really big clinic in Melbourne where I have a team of 20 people. And I'm also involved in the media, and I travel a lot for my work. So a typical day is basically waking up, saying hi to my partner and my dog, and then just ticking everything off my list. Sometimes that's 5 hours of patient alongside supervision with my staff and meetings, or maybe that means I'm jumping on a flight to a different city to present about sexuality there and working with different brands and sponsors.
So there's clearly a need about talking about this issue. So that's great that you have such a big clinic and such a big presence. We want to know from you, a lot of people struggle with little or no sex drive since becoming unwell with a heart condition or following a heart event. How does someone know whether their body is telling them to rest or they need help to get it back?
Oh, I mean, that's such a good question. I think when you think of anything that's going to interrupt your overall quality of life and the way that you're feeling, that is going to have either physical effects or psychological effects or a combination of both. Now, these kind of problems can factor into so many levels of your life. You know, whether you feel like you've got enough energy to get up and go for a walk, or to go to work, or to be able to have some quality time with your partner where you're not absolutely exhausted. All of this can impact the way that you're feeling, and all of that can seep into your sex life bit by bit. And I guess the best way to look at it is, how can we do things that make you feel good, that put the accelerator on to your sex life and to your sexual drive? And how can we take some things off the brake? What are some barriers that are holding you back? Maybe that means you need to cut back on work a little bit, or maybe that means you need to have more working from home, or maybe that means you need to have more sleep, or you need to go see your heart specialist, or just tweak your medication a little bit. There are so many things that we need to factor in, and it's really about being a detective and crossing things off the list.
Yeah, and so how might someone know when they have a sex or intimacy problem?
I think any time that you're thinking about your sex life and you feel like there is an area that is a bit more distressing, when it's not fun, when it's not easy, when it's not pain-free, that is when you have to think, maybe there's something going on here. And I think the problem is we haven't talked about sex a lot traditionally. So when people do have problems, they might feel it like it's normal. It's normal to have a low sex drive, or it's normal to not feel good, or it's normal to have pain in the bedroom. But at the end of the day, if there is something that is distressing you or your relationship, then it's best to go check up and see if there's anything you can do about it.
So what are some credible sources in finding out more about sex and intimacy? For example, whether pain's normal, whether tiredness is normal. Where do people go to talk about this?
Traditionally, they go and see their doctor, but unfortunately, you know, in Australia, not only do we have a lack of sex education in schools, but we have a lack of sex ed in the medical degrees in Australia too. So often there's a 1 to 2 hour lecture in sexual medicine in the medical degrees. And that leaves a lot of GPs not knowing where to turn, which I feel, horrible for. I feel like all of us deserve, I guess, education around this topic, but especially the people that we're turning to for health advice. So a lot of people go see their specialist or their doctor, and they might actually get the wrong answer back and go, you know what, it'll be fine. Have a glass of wine, just relax, or have a bath beforehand. And this isn't the right answer. It's best to go see someone who is actually trained in sexuality. For example, it took me 7 years of study to be a sexologist. That's a long time studying sexuality to be able to talk about what I do. Might as well go have 1 or 2 sessions with a sexologist, see if there's something there. If there is, you have an opportunity to work on it. If there isn't, they'll refer you to the right specialist that can help you.
Yeah, it's great to hear that there are people like you out there, because I'd imagine it would be really hard to know where to turn, especially if you've had the experience of a health professional maybe being dismissive or shutting that conversation down because the professional themselves might not feel so comfortable to talk about this. So how do we empower people to have the conversation and to stand strong and ask the questions?
Well, you know what? I think it's about not giving up and definitely writing down your list of concerns. I myself know what it's like to be within the healthcare system and not get the answers that I needed to be able to look after my health. So in my body, I have to take medication to raise my blood pressure every day because I have venous pulling in my legs, which means that there's all this blood sitting at the bottom of my legs. It's not getting pumped around my body. That makes me really, really tired. And it means that I have to get surgery on my legs, which I've had half of it done, 1 leg done so far. So I really think that it's not about giving up. It's about doing your research. If you feel like you have symptoms, I know we don't fall into Dr. Google. I know it's not a great idea, but sometimes it's a great idea to just list down your symptoms and talk to as many people as possible until you get some kind of answer. Because you're not crazy. We don't want to dismiss your symptoms. We want to make sure that you feel validated and that you feel really good every day.
Yeah, you're right. And for young people especially, sex and sex life is so important. So I really hear you that we need to have these conversations and we need to encourage people to speak up no matter what. We know that some health conditions can be episodic and flare up unexpectedly and have ups and downs, which can impact intimacy. What are some ways to maintain intimacy with your partner if you're feeling physically limited by a health condition?
Yeah, so I think the best thing to do is learn how to communicate. And if verbal communication is not your vibe, if you're struggling with it, then it's best to write a letter or an email to your partner, or even just record a voice message that you can play them. I'm a really big fan of going to your partner with a letter that you've written and either trying to read it to them or giving it to them and asking them to respond to your, I guess, statements. So a statement could be, I'm really struggling with my flare-up. It would be helpful if you looked after me in this way. I'm not going to be able to provide this part of our relationship, but I can give you lots of kisses and hugs and tell you how much I love and care for you. I think the problem is that we often can feel really fearful and anxious about how we are negotiating, I guess, our energy levels and our sex drive in our body. And of course, if there are other conditions and I guess complications that come with our flare-up, there could be concerns around performance, there can be changes in appearance, there can be body image concerns, and some of us may have had surgery, which leads to scarring, etc. Communication is the foundation of a really healthy sex life, and you need to learn how to communicate. As hard as it is and as annoying as it is sometimes, you will be so surprised at how much your sex life changes if you say, you know what? I can't do this today, but I really can do this for you. A head scratchy is really great intimacy, and it doesn't mean that you have to get down and dirty.
Very fair. I want to talk about family planning. A lot of people with a heart condition have had their future plans of starting a family up in question, with conception or pregnancy potentially being complicated or high risks associated with having kids. Some people might even be concerned that their kids might be born with a heart condition themselves. So where does someone start if they're considering planning a family whilst trying to keep all of that in mind?
Yeah, you know what? This is something that is very scary for people that have health conditions. And I know, especially when it comes to heart conditions, it can be nerve-wracking to know that potentially your child might grow up with the same kind of concerns. But I think that the most important thing to do is to form a team with your specialists and really talk to them about what the risks are, what kind of conversations you need to be having with your partner around these concerns. What could you be expecting? Is there any type of testing that can be done? Is there anything that you can do to make sure that you're in good quality health to carry a pregnancy and to work through having a child? There are so many conversations that you need to have around medication, around quality of life, and around high-risk pregnancies as well. It's best to form a team with your heart specialist, with your obstetrician gynecologist, and of course, if you have a psychologist that you're working with that can help with any of those anxieties, that knows about heart conditions, that is the best point of call.
So I think what you're saying there is sex is so simple and yet so complicated at the same time. Everyone has different wants, needs, conditions, capacities, and that you really need to A, have the conversation, and B, build a team around you to be able to give you accurate information, whether that's reassurance or whether that's starting points to go off.
This is not even to do with sex. This is to do with future problems. Sex should be fun and, of course, part of that pregnancy journey. But understanding what's going to be happening within your body and within your child's body moving forward is something that you need to work with as a specialist team. You deserve a great team behind you. That includes your sexologist, of course.
Of course. So earlier we spoke to Alicia, who made comments about her scars, and she bears them all. What can you tell us about sexual self-esteem?
Sexual self-esteem is how you feel within your sexual life, how you feel within your body in an erotic situation, how confident you are, wearing things that make you feel erotic, that make you feel sensual, wanting to fit in the bedroom, knowing what to do, etc. So it's how free you feel, how good you feel in the bedroom. And look, lots of people struggle with sexual self-esteem. We all do at some point, to be honest. Whether you have a heart condition or not, everyone is going to have a problem at some point. So I really think it's important that we work towards having optimal sexual self-esteem, and that can be doing things like prioritizing time for you to be mindful and present in your body, or wearing lingerie that makes you feel good, or embracing your scars if you have any. I really like to look at scars like a piece of art. They are just there to tell a story. I have many scars on my belly and on my abdomen, and I really think that they are something that I'm proud of because I can talk about how I got them and why they're there. And I know not everyone feels this way, especially if they've got a big scar on their chest, but I really implore people to realize that these are beautiful, and whoever you are with in the bedroom is going to embrace your beauty, scars and all, and want to get to know you. It's probably you that's holding back rather than them.
So what would be some of your tips for maintaining passion in a relationship for someone living with a heart condition?
I think it's about, understanding what's on your sexual menu. I think the problem we have in Australia and across the world is that we've grown up with the notion that successful sexuality is about having penetration and orgasm. And that's just not the case, because that rules out a whole part of the LGBTQI plus community, the disabled community. And of course, for some people who are struggling with heart conditions, that may impact on their erectile functioning, or they may have an overwhelming amount of stress in their body, which can lead to tense pelvic floors and then painful sex. So what I think is important to do is actually look at your sexual menu and look at the things that you can do, with penetration and orgasm being on the dessert menu, so at the end of the list, but maybe on the main course and the entrees you might have kissing, or you might have oral sex, or you might have toy play or finger play, or it might even just be an erotic massage, or it might even be an intimate head scratch or a back scratch. All of these things fall under the sexual menu, and they are all considered to be erotic acts. So make sure that you have a list of things that you can do. So whenever you are feeling like you're a bit low, when you don't have much energy, when you're struggling with your health, you can pick something off off the menu that you feel capable in working with, and that is your erotic act for the night or for the week or whatever you choose it to be. I think it's also important to recognize that sex doesn't always have to be in the bedroom. In fact, if you want to mix it up a little bit, why don't you jump into the bathtub and bring a toy in there? Most toys are waterproof these days, so you can have a fun time in there that's also not too much heavy lifting on your body. There is such things as water play in the shower. You can take it to the kitchen or the laundry or the car or whatever you want. It's about having variety. So different spices on your sexual menu.
I love the idea of having a menu so you can pick and choose and feel like, oh, what do I feel like today? For those people who might be low in confidence or a bit shy or genuinely just not know what options are there on the menu, how do you find out what's a possibility?
That goes into research. So don't be shy in following sex positive accounts. So my Instagram is a really great point of call. There are so many amazing sexperts online. There are great websites. Love Honey Australia is a sex toy retailer, and they have an amazing blog that covers all things around, just sex for able-bodied, sex for chronic conditions, painful sex, different toys to use. And they have some great games on there as well, such as this foreplay game, which teaches you different things to do in the bedroom, which means that you're not doing a huge amount of research because the game is telling you what to do.
That's all really great advice. Do you have any comments on researching through pornography?
Look, I think it's best to find ethical pornography. I think that the pornography that we've traditionally grown up with and looked to for sex education is not actually there for education. It's there for entertainment. So I think, pornography is okay, but I think it's, actually skipping a huge amount of the desire component, the anticipation. And I think that you can learn so much more outside of pornography because the traditional elements that you see in porn are really penetration, non-consensual. There's no safe sex practices in there, and there's not a huge amount of focus on female pleasure. So if you do want to actually focus on the realistic aspects of sexuality, maybe branch out a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. It's really good to clarify. This is such an important topic to talk about, and I love that you speak so openly about sexuality and health, and particularly, when living with a chronic health condition. You have so much experience, and I hope people have got some ideas and some pointers of resources to look up and where to go to from here, but most importantly, starting that conversation and just being open about it. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this chat.
Thank you for listening to the Heart to Heart series brought to you by the National Heart Foundation. Special thanks to the Supporting Young Hearts Advisory Group who help guide the work of what we do, and the members of the Supporting Young Hearts community who have openly and fearlessly shared their stories and experiences to help others through their heart journey. This podcast was made possible by the Victorian Government Let's Stay Connected grant and was developed with you for you. For more information about what we talk about today, or if you need further support, please see the links in the show notes, call the Heart Foundation's helpline on 131112 or visit heartfoundation.org.au. Advice and information given by the Heart Foundation is for general information and education purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider if you have or suspect you have a health problem.
This podcast was produced in collaboration with Joy, Australia's Rainbow Community Media Organisation. For more information on Joy and our services, visit joy.org.au.